From Hamilton Place Strategies in Washington, D.C., this is the HPS Insights Podcast.
Good afternoon, HPS Insights listeners. We have a fun show for you all this week. I recorded this last week with a couple of my colleagues who were literally just returning from Consensus 2022, one of the largest cryptocurrency conferences in the U.S. The conference took place June 9th to June 12th, so we wanted to get their fresh takes and recorded this on June 15th, but I think you'll all enjoy the conversation about what it was like back at Consensus for the first time in a couple of years and the conversations taking place about the cryptocurrency industry. So give it a listen. I think you'll enjoy it. And here we go. Welcome to HPS Insights, a podcast from Hamilton Place Strategies, analyzing the current events impacting the business and political communities. I'm your host today, Brian DeAngelis, a partner here at HPS. And we have a bit of a special edition for, I think, the first time in at least a couple of years due to COVID. A few of my colleagues, our staffers, flew down to a real-life, in-person industry conference. This was Consensus 2022, which is kind of the marquee crypto conference down in Austin, Texas. And so I wanted to get them here in the podcast room and talk a little bit about both that experience as we kind of get back to normal here, as well as, their take and thoughts on what they learned at the conference. So let me welcome two of my colleagues, Stephanie Dodge, a senior director here at the firm, and Nicole Beckman, one of our associates who's been with us for a couple of years now. Nicole, Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Brian. It's nice to be on this side of the podcast team.
That's right. That's a fun fact. I should mention Nicole was one of our OG podcast producers, and so this is a good 360 moment right back in it. So let me just start. You guys are down in Austin for a few days. We had a couple clients down there. Maybe start pretty easy. What was it like to be back in an in-person, real live event for a few days?
So it was honestly more fun even than I was expecting it to be. It was cool because it was concentrated in downtown Austin at the convention center. So it was inside of one big, massive building. But since it was downtown, you could kind of pop in and out and go to lunch, meet people at their hotels, and people were hosting events all around downtown Austin. So when I got there, it kind of felt like this big and exciting party in downtown Austin, and it was great to be there.
Yeah, and I'll say I've had these business cards sitting in my bag for a couple of years that I haven't really been able to use. They served their purpose.
They work, right?
Which was nice. Yeah. Oh my gosh, they were great.
Good. Give us some perspective. So DC's sort of reopened a little bit. A lot of folks are doing their happy hours and events, and even the White House Correspondents' Dinner a few weeks ago was kind of risky as a super spreader event. Luckily, it didn't really turn into one, but that was like 4,000 people. What were we looking at Consensus?
So Consensus this year was 20,000 people. And this is, I think I know in 2018, it was about 8,000. So pretty big difference.
That's a big jump. Yeah. Well, great. Tell us a little bit more about the conference. What was kind of the focus? What were you guys doing down there? Love to hear more.
So coming back from it, people have been like, so what was Consensus like? And the way I've been describing it is like a bank conference, a hacker convention, and an EDM festival all in one thing. And it was, both. It was both intellectually very interesting. The panels were fantastic. The people that they got to speak were, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit, were super high level, talking about, really interesting, pressing issues. But then you would leave and you'd go to dinner, and there would be a party next door where there'd be a DJ, a woman on stilts, and pyrotechnics. So it was like this hilarious meeting of people from all different walks of life, but they share an interest in and a passion for crypto and decentralized finance, and that kind of brings them together. So it's a really fun foundation for a gathering.
I'm curious, you both have been working with me and others on crypto clients, if you will, for a while now. We do a lot of this here at the firm. There's been naturally, right, ups and downs, a lot of excitement around crypto. We are heading into a quote unquote crypto winter, or in a crypto winter right now. What was the vibe down there? Were folks excited about where the industry is heading, or was it a little bit of a doom and gloom based on where some of these prices are?
So I'm curious Nicole's thoughts. I didn't feel much doom and gloom, and I think that reflects where the industry is. I was very impressed with the level of sophistication of the conference, of the companies that were there, and people talking about the history of consensus and how many years they've been going to this conference. And to them, I think that what's happening now in the industry is just part of the natural cycle of many industries. There are ups and there are downs, and this is a down, but it's not like this. The sense wasn't that this is a brand new thing that is now going away, but more that this is a natural trend in an established industry, which was interesting to me because I'm newer to crypto, and I think you can think that crypto is as new as you are to it. Whereas it was very interesting for me to see kind of the history of crypto and meet folks who have been in this space for a decade now.
Yeah, I also think I agree with Stephanie. I don't think that the quote unquote crypto winter honestly had that much of an effect on the event, and that's sort of from any sort of participant. So I think Steph mentioned some of the panelists talked about how the participation at the conference has changed over time. So first is sort of the growing size, but also the sort of people who are in attendance. So there was a big institutional presence. Sure. I saw folks from PwC, JP Morgan, there are speakers from Apollo, MasterCard, PayPal, obviously Fidelity. And this mirrors, of course, a increased institutional participation in the industry. And there was a significant DC presence as well, which I know we'll want to talk more about. But I think it was interesting that even these folks, I would say the way that they approached the conference wasn't particularly affected by the current state of play.
Nicole, let me actually pick up right there on something you said. So obviously, the industry has taken off, and at least in terms of attention, but just overall in the last few years. And that's true for consensus too. I mean, obviously they haven't been able to gather during the COVID years, but from where they were in 2018 to where they are today, much bigger conference, first time down in Austin, and attracting, like we see here in DC every day, but attracting attention of kind of the major policymakers and regulators that are interested in this space. I saw Lummis and Gillibrand and others on the list. Tell me a little bit about what you saw down there in terms of DC focus at the conference.
So I think they were the folks that you expected to see there, the ones who've been outspoken in support of the industry. So like Senator Gillibrand, Representative McHenry, CFTC Commissioner Don Stump. I think it was more surprising to see the people who maybe aren't the first that you think of when you think of DC policymakers and crypto. So one panel that we attended was Wally Adeyemo, who's the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, and he spoke with Nick D from CoinDesk. So he spoke about illicit finance, which obviously is his remit. And he recognized crypto has not been used as sort of a major avenue to evade our sanctions, which is a pretty big thing for, I think, a deputy secretary to recognize. He did say Treasury was working on rules about unhosted wallets, but his tone was just very cooperative, sort of highlighting the desire for industry support. And I think in a way that seemed very genuine. And I think it's different than if, Treasury had sent Nellie Lang down there, who has been, I think, their most visible figure on crypto. And then my favorite panel was actually a Fed panel that we went to. So the title was Demystifying the Fed. And it was with David Mills, who's an associate director with Board of Governors, Mark Gould, who's the chief payments executive, Gada Ijam, who's a Federal Reserve Chief Information Officer, and Sunena Tuteja, who is the Chief Innovation Officer. And Sunena was the one who was really sort of moderating the panel. She, I think, has been a big figure in the crypto space. She was up there in cowboy boots, really trying to get all of the regulators to sort of speak to the audience that was there. So for one, David Mills mentioned that he was at Consensus in 2016, which was surprising. But I think unlike some of the other panels, they really felt like they were trying to speak to the audience. So Mark Gould talked about FedNow and the innovations in the payment system. Gada Ijam basically asked for people almost to apply for jobs because they're looking for more technologists.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and David Mills obviously has been involved with the CBDC paper. And one thing that really struck me was, he said, we know we're going to receive comments from companies, from big players, from trade associations, but we really want to hear from all of you. So I'd say, unlike some of the other DC folks who it really felt like they were talking, to journalists, talking to the industry, talking in a way that would get sort of picked up, this panel felt very much like demystifying the Fed for the folks in the room. And there's something really genuine about that.
I'm curious if it worked in the sense of I can totally understand why the Fed and other policymakers would want to go down to Consensus and speak to that audience. We here in Washington know the industry as a whole, but a lot of individual companies are strongly pushing for more regulation. They want the rules of the road and the guardrails for, to help this industry really launch into kind of its next phase, if you will. Was the audience, packing the ballroom to see the Fed? Were they excited to hear what's coming next, or some of the other panels as well? Or was it a little bit trying to convince a skeptical audience on the Fed's role here?
No, I actually, I was pleasantly surprised at how engaged I thought the audience was, particularly at a festival that markets itself as the festival for the decentralized world. To have a room full of people engaging with officials from the Fed, the room was full. People seemed engaged in what the folks from the Fed are saying. And I actually was very pleasantly surprised with that. I think it helps that the Fed has someone serving as what they call a chief innovation officer. And she was saying how she tries to be the bridge between the crypto community and similar communities and the Fed so that they can talk more openly to each other. And it's a two-way street versus the risk that you were talking about, Brian, of it just being one way, the Fed and DC trying to preach to crypto and it's just falling on deaf ears. So she was saying that that's exactly her role, is to open this communication and have it be two ways. And she did a great job moderating the panel. She was super enthusiastic, engaging, and the audience really seemed to be listening and be interested in what they had to say.
That's great. Let me ask you, I'm curious on the media side of things. So, likewise, the mainstream media, I should say, has shown a lot more interest in this industry over the past 6 to 12 months. It's a festival put on by one of the leading, I would say, trade publications of the crypto industry in CoinDesk, but you all were there with one of our clients that we've had on the show before, Grayscale, doing a lot of media meetings and opportunities. Did you see a lot of folks from the non-crypto publications kind of making their way around the conference?
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely had, your crypto trade pubs. They were all there. I mean, it was hilarious. It was like a group of New Yorkers down in Austin. But then you had everybody. I mean, you had someone from the FT that came from London. You had folks from Bloomberg, Axios, of course. So it really was a media list that you would expect to find in DC or New York or San Francisco or London that had come to Austin for consensus specifically, and was engaging in all levels of the conference. And really what was amazing about it, it's a gathering of the most sophisticated people in this space. And they're really interesting people. They come from different backgrounds. Some are traditional finance backgrounds, some are coders, some, you had Edward Snowden appearing virtually from Russia at one point. And to root applause. So, you have folks who have a background in traditional finance, like Bank of America and other places, who are CEOs of these now digital asset companies. So it's a fascinating gathering of really smart people who are really passionate about this. And I think that made for a great media landscape. And we saw people doing media interviews everywhere. Little setups where folks were doing on-camera interviews, one-on-one, on-the-record chats with media. So it was great, and a great event, I think, from a media perspective.
That's awesome. Well, you two know this, but part of the reason I asked you on the show today was to help alleviate some of my FOMO for not making it myself. I can't say it worked. I'm feeling more jealous, but maybe I'll wrap it up. I'll give you guys a chance to rub it in. What was kind of your favorite or coolest thing you saw down there that I missed out on?
I think my favorite was, and Nicole, you'll have to tell me what the room was called, but it was just the central room where there were all the different stands from all the different companies, and just seeing the huge number and the huge variety of companies, and getting to meet representatives from each of them, and having them tell us what the companies did, what role they played in the crypto industry, and where they saw their company going. There was just so much optimism and forward looking, which was so fun. It's a young industry with a lot of promise, and that energy was just palpable throughout the conference. And I think that was my favorite.
Yeah, I think similar to Stephanie, this is my first professional conference due to the pandemic.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I think there was a willingness to engage sort of no matter what professional level you are. I think because it's such a young industry, people were just sort of, willing to talk to like any folks that came by. I imagine that potentially at a more traditional conference, C-suite or other execs might not interact with somebody more junior, but I think at consensus, the energy was very welcoming, and it was really, really easy to talk to anyone.
One last comment that I'll make, this is just for me personally. So as a former litigator, we were lucky enough to be there with Grayscale and their new legal counsel, Don Verrilli, and getting to just chat with John Verrilli and get his thoughts on crypto and where he sees the space going, and just, watching just those conversations were amazing. A personal highlight of mine, I think probably for my career, and that was wonderful.
That is wonderful, and kind of a testament to the draw of consensus, that to have everything we've talked about kind of brought there under one roof, so to speak. So, well, you guys have succeeded in making me feel like I really missed out. So maybe next year. But I want to thank both of you for coming on. I think this is one more giant step towards a return to normal post-COVID world, and hopefully many more of these to come. But really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing what you saw down on the ground in Austin.
Thanks so much for having us, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
And as always, thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of HPS Insights. You can find out more about Hamilton Place Strategies work and our podcasts at hamiltonplacestrategies.com or by following us on Twitter at HPS Insight. I'm your host, Brian DeAngelis, and as always, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the HPS Insights podcast, produced by Hamilton Place Strategies. For the latest updates, follow us on Twitter at HPS Insights and follow us on the web at hamiltonplacestrategies.com.